These issues affect every community and every congressional district in this nation, and so the Member Day hearing serves as an opportunity for our colleagues to present testimony to the Agriculture Committee on the issues that are most important to their constituents. I thank our colleagues for taking the time to share their priorities as they relate to this committee's jurisdiction. My hope is that my Republican colleagues on this committee, who have a responsibility to act as a check on the executive branch and to serve the people who elected them to office, will listen and take their priorities to heart. It has become crystal clear that the White House is not listening to farmers or families right now, and that many of our Republican colleagues, sadly, are not speaking up. An idiotic trade war, Band-Aid relief programs that pick winners and losers in the ag economy, nonstop lies and misinformation about SNAP, pretending that there is no affordability crisis, rural hospitals closing, healthcare costs everywhere going up. That's this administration and today's Republican Party. Instead of admitting that tariffs are increasing costs for all Americans, shutting farmers out of markets that took years and billions of dollars to develop, and making food more expensive for American families, the administration has prioritized rushing a $40 billion bailout to Argentina, instead of ending the trade war that has contributed to increasing farm bankruptcies this year compared to recent years and cost farmers nearly $30 billion in losses. The Trump administration announces a farm aid package for row crops that fails to meet the moment of helping American farmers after a challenging crop year, particularly leaving specialty crop growers, sugar producers, and foresters out in the cold. Day after day, week after week, at press conferences, during TV interviews, and in cabinet meetings, President Trump and his administration make clear that they are not hearing the American people who are telling us, help us, life is getting too expensive. Healthcare costs are going up in America's heartland. Rural hospitals and clinics are closing because of the big ugly bill's $1 trillion in Medicaid cuts. Insurance premiums are skyrocketing due to the ACA tax credits expiring, which nearly 30% of farmers and ranchers themselves rely on for health care. Farmers are drowning in debt as input costs remain high, and trade wars cost them their biggest customers. Hungry seniors and children are getting less to eat because of nonstop attacks on food assistance. Our committee can do something about that. We can bring sanity back to our trade policy. We can make sure that basic needs programs, whether in rural health or food affordability, are there for hardworking Americans when we need them, instead of helping the president cut the heart out of these programs. We can show the American people, the people who sent us to Washington, that we hear them, and we are doing something about the current affordability crisis, if my colleagues in the majority could find the courage. I look forward to hearing from our colleagues about their priorities today, and thank you.
The chair would request other members submit their opening statements for the record so our colleagues may begin their testimony. I'd like to welcome our colleagues who have joined us today to provide testimony on issues important to their congressional districts. We have a bipartisan list of members testifying today, and each member will be recognized for 5 minutes. And I'm pleased now to recognize the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Gonzalez, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Thompson and Ranking Member Craig, for holding this morning's hearing and giving us an opportunity to advocate for our district. I represent the 34th District of Texas in South Texas, and I want to talk about some of the impacts on our region. Earlier this year, Republicans enacted a bill that cut nearly $200 billion from SNAP, the largest cut of SNAP in American history. As Americans are struggling with inflated grocery costs and skyrocketing healthcare prices, taking food assistance away is really cruel. I represent a district that over a quarter of households are recipients of SNAP, the highest of all districts in the state of Texas. And this isn't specific to, this is really a bipartisan issue. 75 of the poorest districts in America are represented by Republicans who also benefit greatly from this program. What this cut will do is force families and children and senior citizens and veterans to go hungry. I urge this committee to work in a bipartisan manner to correct this wrong imposed by the Republican big bad bill. I would be happy to work with any of you on this issue. Another issue I want to talk about that's specific to the Gulf Coast, entire Gulf Coast, in my district, is I'd like to take a moment to talk about the shrimping industry. In that order, first, our domestic shrimpers have really been hurt and experienced economic hardships by increased foreign shrimp imports, fuel price increases, labor shortages, and immigration regulations. As a result, the South Texas shrimping industry and the shrimping industry across the Gulf Coast is in peril. We're losing the American fishing industry to the disadvantage that they have competing with foreign and farm-raised seafood. We should work hard. When we talk about America first, let's also talk about American fishing industry, which is really shuttering. We've lost about half of it in the last, I think, decade. Hundreds of boats are sitting on the docks. Many of them are being sold to other countries because they cannot compete in today's markets. The federal government must do more to protect the shrimping industry and the fishing industry. I urge the committee to allow commercial shrimpers to access agriculture safety net programs to increase FDA inspections and provide resources to allow the USDA to purchase domestic seafood and distribute them to our schools and local food banks. The next issue I want to touch on is the New World screwworm. Second, known as a New World screwworm, as it inches closer to the border of Texas, we're really concerned this could be devastating for the ranching economy, not only in Texas, but across the country. I know for a fact, I've been monitoring this since the issue was on the border of Mexico and Guatemala. We met with the USDA, Dr. Kim Loemeyer in Central Texas. I think she's probably, the global expert on this issue. She told us at the time we needed to be producing 700 million sterile flies weekly. At the time, we were producing about 200. A few months from there, it moved from the border to Veracruz, and now it's one state away from the state of Texas, and we just celebrated the construction of a facility, which will take years. We don't have time to construct a facility. I think we're working with Panama and Mexico and some other places. We're producing about 300 million sterile flies weekly. We need to more than double that, almost triple that, just to hold it back. And I'd urge the committee to speak with her and speak with experts on this, because it's become a very political issue, but we don't have our facts straight, and I think we need to talk to the scientists and get up to par on what we really need. My office is at your disposal to work on this issue. There's facilities in northern Mexico, there's facilities in South Texas. There's places where we were housing migrants that are available. You need about 200,000 square foot to produce these sterile flies, and you need a lot of water. There are places that we can begin immediately. We don't have to wait years, because that's what it'll be, years. And I can assure you right now that this problem is about 150 miles away from our southern border. In 6 months, we'll probably have it in Texas, and it'll continue to grow through the country. We need to address this. So with that, I yield back.
Well, Mr. Gonzalez, thank you for your testimony on behalf of your constituents. Much appreciated. Now, working down through my list, and I'll recognize the gentlelady from Michigan, Representative Tlaib, for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Chairman Thompson and Ranking Member Craig, for hosting this hearing. I'm here because I know that children can't learn if they're hungry. I'm also here because I represent the 12th Congressional District in Michigan, which houses one of the most beautiful, blackest city in the country. I'm also here as the co-founder of the Congressional Mamas Caucus. And for me, I still remember years ago having a mother in my office in tears. And I don't know if you've ever heard the cry of a desperate mother, but I have. And she was crying because the Head Start program that her children were in was closing. And I told her, I'll find you a different place. I'll figure out the transportation. Please, stop crying. I was trying to console her. And she said to me, but you don't understand, that's the only place my children can eat twice a day. So I think after, watching what happened with the SNAP benefit, which is a lifeline for food for our families, was treated as a political pawn, it was devastating. It was incredibly heartbreaking to get the calls and the emails and even the messages through social media. And they're so scared it's going to happen again, Chairman. And so I know that they're not alone, that it's 42 million Americans across the country. But understand in the budget betrayal bill, it's a 15% cut. It's a $6 a day average. $6, we're going to cut 15% across the board. And it's going to be something that literally will take food off of the tables of our families. And when children can't learn when they're hungry, when they can't thrive because they're hungry, it's going to hurt our whole country. And so for me, it's not just the children. Of course, we know it's 40% of SNAP benefits and recipients are older adults, or 40% of SNAP beneficiaries are children, that we know that also we have a number of people that are senior citizens that are also benefit from it. I know right now, studies show that an estimate of $1, Chairman, $1 investment in children returns $62 in value over the lifetime. Investments like SNAP and for childhood development allows kids to learn without thinking about where their next meal comes from. And here is not just children, it's 36% in Michigan alone that are senior citizens that benefit from SNAP benefits. And so, Mr. Chair, a 70-year-old woman asked me to share her story, and I think it's important because she doesn't even get the $6, she gets actually lower than that. She says, I'm 74-year-old, single female senior citizen with Social Security as my only income. I get $24 in SNAP benefits. This helps me purchase fresh fruits and vegetables. She says she only buys a half gallon of milk, margarine, and a loaf of bread. And I don't know what to say to her when I say, are we really allowing, are we saying to her that we don't have the money to make our seniors, help them afford milk and bread? And so it is important to understand that the impact is real, and it's not just Republicans and Democrats. It's the American people, and we have a crisis around access to food. We know this, and the cost is going up. But even in Michigan, it's my ag community. The agricultural sector in Michigan is incredibly important. And they say now, the Michigan Farmers Market Association said they realize 15% in benefits from SNAP investment from this body. And so it's going to be important to understand that connection. I have to say this because it's heartbreaking to see us fighting for a Pentagon budget, what it was, $190 billion for a Pentagon budget that can't even pass an audit. Yet where we cut is in SNAP benefits, not where they're wasting all this money. And with my residents, I'm telling them we always have money for war, but we don't have money for food for them. And so somehow, again, it is lacking the priority and understanding why it's important to make sure that we invest in SNAP benefits. Stories like this I'm hearing from residents are not isolated. We're all hearing them. And so I'm asking all of you to please do your best in investing into SNAP benefits. Do more than what we're already doing. And it is a win-win. It's not just the farmers, it's our whole country as a community, as together, that we understand the investment is important for our children. Lastly, I also have urban farmers, Chairman, and don't forget the urban farmers. I say this because some of my families, the only place they can get food is a gas station. And now we have urban farmers creating these farmers market where people can get fresh food. They can get access to food that, again, they don't have access to at a gas station. And so I'm asking all of you, as you prioritize, and when you talk about farmers, talk about all the farmers. Don't forget urban farmers. With that, I yield.
Thank the gentlelady. If members do have questions, I apologize. I missed that when Mr. Gonzalez was here. So just indicate and let me know. And Mr. Scott has indicated.
Thank you.
Recognized.
Mr. Leib, you said the lady was 74 years old?
Yeah, she was 74.
Well, she's exempt from any of the changes that we made.
Well, she's saying that when during the shutdown, sir. When the shutdown, she says, are we really political pawns with the SNAP cuts, the benefits?
Oh,
So
well,
for her, yeah,
well,
and she always got it on, so every state invests.
Let me finish.
Oh,
It's my
okay.
time, you had your time. So first of all, like 99% of the Republicans voted to keep the government open. I know there were some Democrats that voted
know,
to keep
sir,
the government open. But the fact is, if she's a senior, seniors and children were exempt from the changes.
Oh, I'm talking about during the shutdown, sir.
Okay, all
So
right.
she gets it
That's fine.
on the 30th. and she
I
didn't get,
understand,
yeah,
and that's
she
why,
waits
that's why
for it.
I think what
And sir,
the
she
Senate
doesn't
did.
understand what's happening here. She just knows that her card didn't get reloaded.
Okay.
So just so you
All
know.
right, so let me say this. I had a lady at Walmart that I know, her husband's disabled, she works full-time. She asked me if her benefits were gonna be cut, and the answer was no. Her benefits were not gonna be cut. I mean, so again, I just, the way you said it, you were indicating that they were gonna be cut because she was 74, the way I understood it. You were
No,
talking
I
about
was
during the
sharing the
shutdown,
story
that wasn't
because
clear.
I
That's
told her
fine.
we had $5 billion, as you know, and money that we could have used, it's emergency response money, that we could have used to make sure she didn't go hungry for those few days.
Seniors and children were exempt from the changes that
Sir,
we made
I'm
to
talking
the
about the
SNAP benefits.
shutdown and the political, the back.
I voted to
know,
keep the
I get
government
what you're
open, you
saying.
voted to shut it down, so I'll yield the
I
remainder of my time.
understand. And Chairman, through you, just please know, even that little bit of few days, if we didn't, we should have used the $5 billion that we all appropriated and agreed to, and she wouldn't have, I mean, again, the anxiety and fear that we just inflict on our families. They don't know what's happening here. They just
Right.
know their card
But-
wasn't reloaded.
Yeah, the shutdown was absolutely unforgivable. Mr. McGovern?
Yeah, well, let me just say for the record, my friends voted for nearly a $200 billion cut to SNAP in the big ugly bill, right? So when they talk about not cutting benefits, they are. And number two, this is the first administration in history that actually withheld food assistance from people even during a shutdown. This was a conscious decision. Federal courts were telling them that they had
And they
to
appealed it.
administer it, and they kept on appealing it. That's where they're coming from. And I would just say the cuts to SNAP that this Congress has enacted represent a moral failing in this Congress. The idea that making sure that no one in this country goes hungry that somehow it's a radical idea is unconscionable. And by the way, the SNAP benefit is inadequate. It's on average of about $2 per person per meal. I mean, try living on that. And that is why so many people on SNAP are looking for additional help from food banks and food pantries mid-month, because it doesn't go far enough. And the other thing I want to put to rest too is I keep on hearing people say people on SNAP ought to work. Well, the majority of people who are able-bodied who are on SNAP do work. Some of them are working not just one job, but 2 jobs just to try to make ends meet. And the idea that somehow we are nickel and diming this program, that we are taking benefits away from people, at the same time we're giving tax cuts to millionaires and billionaires and big corporations, I think is pathetic. And so I thank you all for being here and raising the issue of SNAP.
Thank you. Representative Tlaib, I just have a question. The woman who shared this story with you, what is her political affiliation?
I don't know, I don't ask.
Pretty much. And I think that's the point I'm trying to make. It doesn't matter. And I just want to make sure that we level set this Member Day hearing, because it's not about what you did or you did. It is bringing forth the priorities and the concerns from constituents. Because at the end of the day, that 74-year-old woman who gets $24 a month doesn't really care the letter behind the names of the people sitting on this dais. What she cares about is her fear and frustration with how am I going to continue to buy that loaf of bread, that margarine, that gallon of milk. So, right, so I just think that that's the important part of the testimony that you just gave. Because I think what we experienced during the shutdown and what everyone saw is something that I've been well aware of, is that every part of the country, the fragility of our food security systems. And then the second part of what you said about many people in the places where you represent having to literally only get groceries from a gas station, and I think that's very important, because a lot of times on this committee, we're talking about what people can purchase. There really isn't a lot of availability in a lot of these communities. So can you talk just a little bit about what you see in that respect for what is available to people in these communities that you represent?
You should see it. If you go into a gas
I've
station,
seen
and I
it.
know some of you have seen these massive kind of new gas stations with these are not, these are the old gas stations. If you remember going in there to get, I used to go in there to get my now laters but it's just, because I actually go and look. Next to where the auto-related supplies is like bread, cookies, chips. It's not, healthy foods, but when you don't have access, that's what happens. That's why it was so important that all of you worked really hard to make sure that EBT cards and food assistance can be used at some of the farmers market. And I'll tell you, it is transformative, the way on Saturdays and sometimes during the week they have these pop-up farmers market for our families, and they are taking fresh tomatoes, zucchini, you name it. I mean, it's amazing to see, but you should, if you ever get a chance, just go into some of the gas stations. I'm talking about the old school gas stations. I'm not talking about the really fancy ones that come up now. The ones in my community are the ones with literally, Congresswoman Hayes, it's like
Oh, I know. I used to
two
do.
rows, and it's just, that's it. And then everything else is just, really
Absolutely.
junk food.
Thank you. I think that's very important. I used to do an assignment with my students on urban revitalization, and one of the tasks was how long it would take for you to find a fresh tomato in your community. I would give the students a radius. You couldn't have any transportation. How long would it take for you? Not tomato paste, not canned tomatoes, not tomato sauce, but a fresh tomato. And the discussions that came out of that when my students realized how difficult it was to access fresh fruits and vegetables in their surrounding communities, and how that looked very different in some other communities. Thank you so much for your testimony. I yield back.
Okay, with that, Representative Tlaib, thank you so much for your testimony. We have two members of the committee that are testifying. I'm going to go to them next so that they can then take their place on the dais in case they have questions of other witnesses. So first recognize the gentleman from California, Mr. Costa.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member Craig, for the opportunity to speak at Members' Day. This morning, I speak on behalf of California, the constituents I represent in the 21st District, and the great, beautiful San Joaquin Valley that is one of the most productive agricultural regions in the entire country, therefore the world. I speak as a third-generation farmer. California's 70,251 farms and ranches are remarkably productive. Given the average size, 70% of these farms is less than 100 acres, 89% are less than 500 acres. And yet I represent, as a third-generation farmer, those individuals, those families that really put food on America's dinner table every night. And food is a national security issue. We don't treat it that way, I don't believe, often enough, but it is. Food on America's dinner table is a national security issue. And in California, the #1 agricultural state, we produce 50% of the nation's fruits, nuts, vegetables, 20% of the milk supply, over 400 agricultural commodities that we grow, $61 billion at the farm gate. It's imperative, I think, given the current economic conditions we're facing with input costs and the cost of what farmers and ranchers and dairymen are getting for their products, that it's not making it. It's not making it these days across the country. And we know that specialty crops are so critical to good nutrition. Robust congressional oversight in the area of specialty crop insurance is necessary. The recent Farm Bridge Assistance Program announced this week by the administration, $12 billion, of which only $11 billion is going to row crops, $1 billion to specialty crops. I don't get it. This is deja vu all over again, as Yogi Bear once said. We went through this in the first Trump administration, where we were acknowledging that tariffs had a negative impact on the farm gate economy, and there was an effort for the administration then to provide $28 billion out of the Commodity Credit Corporation to try to put in a safety net. Once again, we see specialty crops being left out. What? I don't get it. $40 billion for Argentina, $12 billion for American agriculture. Somebody's got their priorities, I think, woefully in the wrong place. I've always said that tariffs don't win trade wars, and I think the actions of this administration prove that. The fact of the matter is that we need to deal with the issues with our longstanding trading partners and allies. I've consistently led the charge for market access program, foreign market development programs, and peace programs, USAID, that frankly I think address the issues of nutrition, not only for the people in our country, but around the world. Our farmers, ranchers, and dairymen want to provide their neighbors and communities food on their dinner table. They don't want to cut them off. The not-so-beautiful bill took food assistance away from nearly 5 million Californians. 5 million Californians. In my district alone, almost 30% of the households rely on SNAP. 67,000 out of 237,000 homes. These homes include 60% of them with a child, 34% with an elderly person, 46% includes someone living on a disability. We must ensure that we strengthen and improve these programs, not weaken them. And the examples that was used in the cutoff that took place earlier this year is a separation of the nutrition programs from the commodity other titles, and I fear on my fourth Farm Bill reauthorization that we will never be able to put the toothpaste back in that tube as a result of the separation of nutrition from the other title programs. Let me just talk about some other areas that I'm concerned about. Conservation programs are key to reducing fire risks. We need to be bolstering our efforts there. Conserving our Waste Sustainability Act is another area. Headwaters protection, improvement, and flexibility. Each of these bills would strengthen the programs. The chairman, I don't know where you continue to get your sense of enthusiasm. I appreciate that. And if we can come together to deal with some of these issues next year, God bless all of us. We need to do it. Let me close by saying the following. This reorganization of the United States Department of Agriculture has been going on for 6 months. The reductions and the separation into 4 hubs, I don't understand. We have not had the Secretary of Agriculture testify before the committee to justify the reorganization plan. We don't know what the appropriate priorities are with the reorganizational plan. I do not get it. This committee needs to provide the proper amount of oversight for reorganization to understand where the Department of Agriculture is going in the future. We've got work to do. We must work together, and I want to thank the chair and the ranking member for giving me the opportunity to give you a little sentiment of my views and the concerns that the people of California have, whether you're on food assistance or whether you're part of the vital, incredible agriculture economy that California represents. Thank you very much.
Well, Mr. Costa, thank you, and thank you for your service on this committee. Anyone have any questions for Mr. Costa? I'll be real specific. What I'm asking for members are questions for him to answer versus long statements. Anyone over here?
Thank you.
Go
Thank
ahead,
you.
Ms. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Costa, if you could touch a little bit more on how the ranchers in your district if they have expressed the concerns around the Argentina bailout as opposed to this new pool of money that's supposed to assist them?
Well, the expressions range from outrage to being mystified to frustration, because the input costs have continued to rise as a result of inflation. And as I told President Obama a number of years ago, farmers and ranchers, dairymen, they're price takers, not price makers. You grow your commodity, your product, or if you have a dairy, it's 365 days a year, and you put all this investment in it, but at the end of the year, you get paid for whatever the market prices are. And so they see their costs increasing, but yet what they're getting for their product, their commodity, not increasing. And the tariff war is a real critical part of that. $40 billion for Argentina, $12 billion for American agriculture. They don't get it. Neither do I.
Thank you. And as we talk about those input costs, I too have had the opportunity to visit some farmers across the country in Michigan, Illinois, of course, Ohio, where I represent. And the sentiment that has been shared with me is that I will give the administration a little bit of credit, because we have been so delayed with getting a farm bill over the finish line for this $12 billion, but it just does not seem to meet the moment. And the parameters that have been established, capping it at $150,000 will not help some of the most most impacted farmers, cattle ranchers and dairymen, as I see it. Would you agree with that assessment?
No, I would agree with that assessment, and I must say this is a difficult time in farm country, whether you're in any region of the country or out in California, because of inflation, because of the input costs, and because, again, farmers are price takers, not price makers. And clearly this tariff war has impacted their ability to access those markets. And guess what? The other countries have the ability to retaliate, and they do. Canada. You know, we have the trade agreement with Canada and Mexico. 40% of California wines have gone to California. By the way, they're good wines. But you can hardly find a bottle of California wine in a supermarket or in a restaurant in Canada today. Why? Because they're acting in response to this tariff war. And they have other markets where they can access those products and enjoy them. And in some cases, we never regained those markets. So it's of great concern. And that's but one example.
Thank you. And as I close, I think that you mentioned the tariffs being part of the major problem as it relates to this situation that we're in, which is a self-inflicted, self-induced problem, if you ask me. And the fact that the president is touting that the relief that he is offering the farmers is coming from tariffs, I believe is questionable, because if I understand the resource correctly, the source of these funds are coming from the CCC, not actually the tariffs. And we have industry folks who are in litigation to question the legality of the tariffs and to fight for getting the recuperation of the resources that they had to spend on tariffs in their own companies, Costco,
I think you're
for
correct,
example.
and the administration won't say it, but I'll flat out make a point. The fact that they're reducing some of these tariffs, I think, is an acknowledgement that it's impacting the costs. Why else would they reduce in the last week some of these tariffs and some of these products if in fact it were not impacting the bottom line? And so it's a de facto way of acknowledging that the tariffs are impacting the costs to consumers, and this is their response to try to address it. But, you know, it's not working.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask unanimous consent to submit for the record a Reuters article from November the 11th. U.S. profited from Argentina currency swap deal. The Treasury Chief Besant says,
Without objection, the widows ask that our focus be on.
absolutely, Mr. Chairman, but it just, the members of this committee know that it's a false narrative to call a currency swap a bailout. We actually profited from the currency swap. It was an effort to stabilize the economy in that country, and the facts will show that that what we did worked, and we actually profited from it. It was a currency swap, not a bailout. With that, I yield.
Thank you, Chairman Thompson and Ranking Member Craig, for allowing us the opportunity to testify here today. As you know, I serve on this committee, and it's with great pride that I serve on this committee, given what it means to my district. I represent Alabama's 2nd Congressional District, which consists of 13 counties. 11 of them are completely rural, and the 2 non-completely rural counties are likely the only 2 places in my district that most people on this committee or in America have ever heard of in my district, and that's Mobile in Montgomery, and both of those have significant rural portions of those counties as well. So the work of this committee is not abstract to me or to the district that I represent back in Alabama. For my community, ag issues are a daily reality, from soybean farmers and specialty crop growers to row crop growers to our forestry industry. Agriculture and the work of this committee has real-life ramifications on my neighbors across the 2nd District. And historically, this committee has met those needs with a spirit of bipartisanship that puts the needs of rural America first, and that's the way I try to operate myself on this committee. I think many people know that I go above and beyond to attempt to work across the aisle in ways that will bring tangible benefits to the people of my district and of this nation. And I believe that commitment right now matters more than ever. And we can start with what has been touched on, I guess, a lot already, so I won't beat a dead horse, as we say back home, but I think it's worth noting. You know, earlier this year, we did witness the largest SNAP cut in the history of this country by this administration through the bill, and we also saw throughout the shutdown process the refusal to spend available money on SNAP beneficiaries. And so that is something that was very concerning and something that my colleagues here have touched on. So I'm going to spend my time touching on another aspect of those SNAP changes, and that's the fact that in the big bill, you know, we held a hearing on SNAP after we made the SNAP cuts. We held our first hearing on SNAP, and every witness on the panel testified that we had put into control of the states the ability of whether or not they would even participate in a SNAP program or not. And that is one of the biggest, most concerning pieces that I hope we can come back together in a bipartisan way and rectify, because as it is now, if states do not meet or cannot or refuse to meet the cost-sharing provisions for whatever reason, whether they are political reasons, whether they're financial reasons, every witness on this panel testified at that hearing that there is no SNAP in that state. And that is not where we should be from a policy standpoint. I don't think it's good policy. I don't think it's good law. And it's certainly not good patriotism to allow 50 different states to say, well, we're not going to feed hungry people, even though they would qualify in other states. And so that's something that I certainly hope that we can come together and work in a bipartisan way to at least fix that issue. The rising costs and tariffs is something that's huge. It's something that's impacting, I think, all of our districts in a variety of ways. I represent a community where the median individual income is just north of $32,000. To say that a different way, 50% of the people who file a tax return in my district make less than $32,000 a year. Is one of the poorest districts in this country. And so even the smallest rise in the cost of putting food on the table or the cost of doing business, it significantly impacts people where I'm from. And so it's something that we, I think, have to keep at the front of mind as we continue our work in this environment that we're in. And so I want to cite to that. The Farm Bill. Everyone knows here we're long overdue for a Farm Bill. I'm a rookie on this committee. I'm hoping that I can bring some rookie good luck with us, or I was hoping to bring some rookie good luck in terms of getting a Farm Bill across the table. Obviously, many of those provisions were pumped into H.R. 1, but there's still things that have to be done. And it is sincerely my hope that we can come back to the table in a meaningful way, in a timely way, and pass some things that will support our beginning farmers, that will expand ag research, that will modernize SNAP, that will strengthen our crop insurance, something that will ensure that our rural communities have the housing infrastructure and economic tools that they need going forward. And with my remaining time, one of the big reasons I wanted to be on this committee was for rural development purposes. I represent a district where rural hospitals are closing left and right, probably at the fastest rate of any district in this country. We have a number of food deserts with no grocery stores. We have a number of areas that don't have rural broadband access. And so it is my hope that we can prioritize working together across the aisle in a meaningful, impactful way to be able to bring some rural development funds to not just my district, but to everyone on this committee's districts and in Congress to be able to positively impact the lives of those people in rural America, to show them that, you know, despite the environment here, that we can still figure out a way to move the ball forward on a wet field. And so I look forward to working with you guys to do that. And thank you. I see my time has expired. I yield back.
Ms. Figures, thanks so much. Anyone have any questions for Ms. Figures? If not, sir, thank you for representing your constituents. Go ahead, Ms. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Figures, you touched on the rural development. I know that broadband and internet access has been essential in both the urban and the rural communities. Is that something you can elaborate on?
Yes. I mean, if you want to come home with me one day to Alabama, to my district, to some of the rural parts of my district, I can take you to a McDonald's parking lot in some of these rural counties. And it is more cars in the parking lot than people in the restaurant because of the need. They don't have access to the internet. And I know that's not unique to my district. I'm sure if we, go to communities across the dais, you would see something similar. The difference is many of the communities that I represent, they don't have the capacity locally. They don't have the tax base. Some of them have geographical challenges. And quite frankly, given the economics of it, historically what we have seen is that companies are not willing to make the middle leg or the last leg investment in expanding broadband access, because it'll just take them too long to reap the profits of it, which from a business perspective, as a business owner myself, I understand that. We don't want business owners being forced to make decisions that put them in the red. But I think as it relates to rural broadband, that's an area where the federal government has to step up, because its implications on education, its implications on being able to bring businesses into areas, its implications on rural telemedicine. And so it's something that ultimately is costing us in the long run. And so it is my hope that we can come together in a way to drive some real resources to rural broadband deployment.
And I love that you touched on telemedicine, because when we consider the fact that the Affordable Care Act is going to skyrocket folks' premiums, and we already know that the largest cuts to our healthcare system in our nation's history has already resulted in some rural hospitals closing. The farmers that I visited in different parts of the country rely on the Affordable Care Act to provide health care to their families and their employees as well. Can you speak about that?
Yeah, look, we've heard from several farmers and just a number of constituents in general, as I'm sure everyone here has, in terms of the impact that the premium subsidies have. Regardless of how they got here or when they got here, and they provide a meaningful benefit to millions of American families, and about 50,000 or so just in my district. And on average, without those premiums, they will see their health care costs on average increase by about 106% in my district. And again, this is a district where the individual median income is just $32,000, and half of people make less than that. And that's not even raising that number up to 35 or 37 or 38, which is still too low. But at the end of the day, I represent a very poor district financially speaking, and so it's something that really matters. And on the hospital front, I say this not to raise alarm flags. I got 13 counties in my district. You can deliver a baby in 2 of them. 10 of the 13 counties either have a hospital that has closed or is in the process of converting to an REH to be able to stay open, or on literal life support. The largest hospital in my state capital, Montgomery, which I represent, is in the middle of a bankruptcy, and they are like the hub of rural health care in that region, and it's only 2 hospitals in Montgomery. So if you lose that one, you're really in a bad situation in terms of rural health care. And this is all in a state that has the 3rd lowest life expectancy in the United States of America. And so it's the healthcare piece to me it's not talking points, it's not political. It's how do we get to an answer that can fix these issues and at least keep our hospitals open, because it's hard to recruit a business or retain a business or to recruit back retirees who grew up in an area to come back to where they grew up, or to recruit developers or builders to come to an area when that pitch begins with the reality of we don't have a hospital. No one wants to live in those communities. No one wants to invest in those communities, and that's not a red or blue or Dem or Republican issue. That's just a pure economics issue that it is my hope that we can find a way to work collaboratively to recognize that fact, and figure out a way to try to address it. And I know, look, and there are some members on this committee that I know have worked on both sides of the aisle to try to address rural health care. But we have an ability to do it through rural development funds, and I look forward to working with you guys to figure out a way to try to do it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Figurs. Thank you for your testimony. Now recognize the gentle lady from Washington State, Representative Schreier, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Thompson and Ranking Member Craig, for the opportunity to testify today. Over the past year, our constituents have had their food assistance stripped away from them. Working people are struggling with rising costs. Producers and consumers are dealing with the uncertainty of tariffs, and we're leaving farmers behind in all of this. And today's Member Day really couldn't be timelier. The government shutdown highlighted just how important SNAP is for all of our districts. While people were working without pay and their SNAP benefits were delayed, food banks were then overrun, and many of my constituents actually reached out to see how they personally could help make up the difference, but the fact is that none of us can. Earlier this year, House Republicans made it even harder to access SNAP benefits. Food's not a luxury, it's a necessity, as you've heard from every one of my colleagues up here, and we should be striving to make sure that everybody has the food they need and not increasing barriers for those who are already struggling. The Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for Women, Infants, and Children, or WIC, is another program that needs our continued investment. WIC's an effective intervention to support positive pregnancy and birth outcomes and healthy child development, and WIC saves lives. Studies have shown that WIC reduces the risk of preterm birth and infant mortality, reduces the prevalence of childhood obesity, and saves significant healthcare costs. And at a time when constituents are forced to spend thousands more on health care coverage or go without coverage altogether, this could not be more imperative. We also need to invest in community resources like food banks that provide that safety net lifeline during times of crisis or to make up for SNAP deficits. The TFAP program, the Emergency Food Assistance Program, or TFAP, offers this support while also investing in our agricultural community. My bill, the Eat Healthy Foods from Local Farmers Act, takes this one step farther by allowing states to use TFAP dollars to purchase locally grown food from small and beginning farmers and get that to their local food banks and local food organizations. This bill would also fill a gap that was left by the Local Food Purchase Assistance Program, which was hastily canceled by the Trump administration earlier this year. I will be reintroducing the Eat Healthy Foods from Local Farmers Act this week, and I urge the committee to please prioritize it and other ways to invest in family farms. Rising costs are not only impacting consumers, they're lowering profits for producers. The administration's tariffs have increased infrastructure costs and risked farmers' opportunity to just compete fairly in a global marketplace. It took over 2 years of my fighting to convince India to drop their retaliatory tariffs on Washington apples following President Trump's 2018 tariff war, which precipitated a 99% drop in those apple exports. We cannot afford to spend years cleaning up this new tariff mess while our local economies continue to struggle to pay Trump's tab. I introduced the Agriculture Export Promotion Act to increase funding to USDA export promotion programs like the Market Access Program to give farmers who export their crops a fighting chance in this Trump economy. My district is home to apples and pears and a variety of other specialty crops, much of which is exported. And I also want to thank you for your focus on expanding specialty crop research and extension services. I introduced bipartisan legislation to waive the prohibitive matching funds requirement for specialty crop research funding, and this will allow our research institutions and individual orchardists to more readily invest in projects to combat fungicide resistance in wine grapes and pestilence in onions, precision irrigation for fruit growers, and a variety of other issues, including, we were talking about flies before, mealy flies as well, not just mealy worms. Finally, we need to support a resilient agricultural system and ensure that farmers and producers can invest in climate-smart practices. My bill, the Partnerships for Agriculture Climate Action Act, allows farmers to choose to implement practices that reduce emissions, enhance soil carbon storage, and improve resilience to extreme weather. It's modeled after a bipartisan Washington state program, and it is a good bill. I also introduced the bipartisan Enable Conservation Act, which expands the Conservation Reserve Program county acreage cap so that more farmers can choose to restore their land and protect it for future generations. All of our U.S. conservation programs are oversubscribed, and I urge the committee to prioritize these pieces of legislation and conservation programs that help the earth and our farmers. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank the gentlelady. Any questions for Dr. Schreier? Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Schreier, so thankful for your testimony. I just want to get a little bit more insight. You talked about the 99% drop in the apple exports. Can you walk us through that? What countries were impacted? Did the market recover? Like, how did Washington work through that?
So Washington apples are the best apples in the world. Most of them are exported, but chances are when you go to the store down the street, you will see apples from my district. These particular tariffs were retaliatory tariffs imposed by India on the U.S. after the U.S., the Trump administration, first Trump administration, imposed tariffs on India. Predominantly, India was importing Red Delicious apples, which are not consumed so much in the U.S. anymore. We have so many other varieties, but they're very popular in India. And that tariff brought a $120 million market down to $1 million market. It really nearly killed these apple farmers. It was 2 years of fighting. We finally got it flipped around, and they are now up and shipping again, but this is all quite uncertain. We saw what happened the first time, and retaliatory tariffs hurt farmers.
And were they able to recover back up to the $120 million, or is it still a work in progress? Or
It's still a work in progress. We don't know if they're going to get all the way back to 120. It'll take some time. I mean, the longer that you don't have a market, the more likely it is that you're going to lose that market permanently. And we have already experienced that in Washington State, specifically with regard to China.
Exactly, and so that was my point, because that's something that I also experienced when visiting farms in the Midwest as it relates to soybeans. The soybean market has been drastically impacted by these tariffs, and the concern of the farmers is if they will be able to recover and regain those markets. And when however you want to phrase it, but I'll call it a bailout too. When you're bailing out other countries like Argentina, when it comes to our beef and cattle market, it creates a space where our farmers are challenged to regain those markets. And so what do you do? And so I appreciate you sharing that. And with that, I will yield back.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a point. I appreciate you bringing up your comments about the WIC program. Very important, and so many of our families rely on that program. The chairman and I both sit on the Committee of Education and Workforce, which oddly enough has jurisdiction over childhood nutrition programs. So I would encourage you to also share that part of your testimony with the Committee on Education and the Workforce, because it is worth noting and it's very important, and that overlap needs to be I guess considered, because we work together with the two committees to make sure that that program is funded.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just Ms. Schreier, India has long had tariffs on the majority of U.S. agricultural products going into that country, correct?
Yes, this was an additional 50% that killed the market.
Right.
I mean, there's a point where
I'm
you can
not-
bend only so far and then you break.
But I will tell you, just as somebody who represents pecan growers and a lot of other products that go to India, India has long had significant tariffs on our agricultural products going into that country, correct? Now,
Yes.
that's,
But the
that's-
point is
but-
really not that. The point is that we were at a great equilibrium. Our farmers were thriving, and then additional tariffs got
Okay.
added on unnecessarily
Okay,
against
so
essentially
what-
an ally.
Where I disagree with you on that
Yeah.
is your term equilibrium, because what we want to reach is equilibrium. And I know what their tariff was on pecans. I know what it took for my good friend and colleague, Sanford Bishop, what it took for David Scott, what it took for myself to work to get the India tariff simply back down to a level where they were even affordable in their country. And so we can disagree on things, but India had long been tariffing U.S. agriculture products going into that country. Our goal is to reach an equilibrium with them where we get the tariffs reduced. With that, I'll yield.
If I could just add, the U.S. feeds the whole world. If we had calibrated our country just to supply food for our own country, we would not have farmers, stuck in this position where they're getting lowballed by local supermarkets, so they can't make ends meet if they only sell domestically. We don't have enough
Ma'am,
people in
there-
this country to eat all of this, and
So
we need to
so-
figure
so we
out
might- we
how to
might
play
agree-
fairly in the world.
We might agree more on that than you think we do. They're not actually being lowballed by the supermarket. They're being lowballed because there are very few people that are actually buying the commodity and turning it into food anymore. So there are very few cereal makers. There are very few companies that are actually buying the commodity and turning it into the products that we buy at the grocery store.
Different products, apples are apples. You just eat an
Fair
apple.
enough. Fair enough. Fair enough. I'm talking about peanuts. I'm talking about grains. That's fair enough. But pecans are pecans too. Actually, they're pecans until you bake a pie with it, then it's pecans.
Well, as we finish up, Dr. Schreier, I wanted to say Dr. Schreier has been a champion on child nutrition. Next week, we will have on the floor Whole Milk for Healthy Kids, which she is an original co-sponsor of, restoring that nutrition as an option back into our schools. As many of this panel actually are co-sponsors of it.
Thank you for
Dr.
partnering with
Schreier
me.
was one of the leaders on it, so thank you for that. Please recognize a very patient member of Congress who has waited through this panel. I apologize. Representative Underwood for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member Craig. Americans across the country, and especially in rural communities, are feeling the impact of President Trump and MAGA Republicans' extreme policies. Families are paying more for basics. Hospitals are closing. Farms are facing higher costs and more extreme weather due to man-made crises like climate change and Trump's tariffs. And instead of strengthening our rural economies and improving affordability, Trump's big, ugly bill made things worse. It cut Medicaid by nearly $1 trillion, threatening access to life-saving care for rural communities and increasing the cost of health care for everybody. It also undermined vital conservation payments that help farmers face the dual challenges of rising costs and a changing climate. And on top of the big ugly bill, President Trump and his tariffs have created chaos for the communities that keep this country fed. The damage is obvious, and rural communities are the ones paying the price. That's why I've introduced 2 bipartisan bills to undo some of the harm House Republicans have caused: the Prioritizing Rural Hospitals Act and the Strong Farms, Strong Future Act. Together, these bills address 2 of the biggest challenges I hear about from farmers in my district: access to health care and affordability. Republicans just passed the largest cut to health care in American history, and now hundreds of rural health care facilities are projected to close. When a hospital closes, families are forced to travel for hours for emergency care. Preventive care plummets, and conditions worsen before people can get help. That means higher costs for families and higher costs for the entire healthcare system. We must act immediately to address the significant challenges people in our rural communities face in accessing quality health care. My bill, the Prioritizing Rural Hospitals Act, would address these disparities by prioritizing funding for rural health care facilities applying for rural development funding through USDA. This bill gives communities the ability to renovate outdated buildings, reopen shuttered clinics, expand telehealth, and equip providers with the tools that they need to expand care. The Prioritizing Rural Hospitals Act is a crucial step towards reversing the damage done by Trump and House Republicans when they slashed federal investment in rural health care. We need to act quickly to provide rural communities with the resources that they need to ensure everybody can access care when they need it, no matter where they live. Unfortunately, Trump and House Republicans didn't stop at cutting health care. To pay for tax cuts to the wealthy, they also stole from the conservation programs that farmers rely on. Family farms keep rural economies running, and they've been hit hard by rising costs and the financial uncertainty that comes with the changing climate. The big ugly bill undermined conservation programs that farmers rely on to manage risk, improve soil health, and stay competitive. It pulled the rug out from under farmers who are acting as good stewards of their land. My bill, the Strong Farm, Strong Families Act, the Strong Farm, Strong Future Act, is a common sense measure that puts farmers back on solid ground. It makes sure that when costs go up for things like cover crop seeds, labor, and equipment, conservation payments rise with them. Finally, farmers will receive inflation-adjusted payments for implementing and strengthening climate practices on their farms. It also builds on the Conservation Stewardship Program, so farmers who adopt or improve conservation practices can renew their contracts with ease. Plus, it expands climate-smart bundles so that farmers can access region-specific bundles for different types of land. These practices are helping farmers reduce input costs and stabilize yields. Better soil health means fewer expensive fertilizers. Better grazing systems mean healthier herds and lower feed costs. Better water retention means fewer crop losses during drought. These bills give farmers and families the support that they're being denied by this administration. As Congress works towards a bipartisan farm bill, we cannot ignore rural hospitals or the financial pressure on family farms. Both of these bipartisan proposals should be included in a farm bill and brought to the House floor without delay because rural communities need action now. Thank you, and I yield back.
Well, I thank the gentlelady, and certainly, I think the economic rural development aspect of the Farm Bill has been a force for good.
Yes.
When I look at the construction of hospitals or whether it's maybe a new diagnostic machine or an emergency room upgrade, and I think it is, I think it's something that's overlooked by maybe a lot of members of Congress, and where it actually is a significant tool. I appreciate your focusing on that.
Yes, sir.
Represent any other members that have questions or anything?
I would just mention to you, ma'am, one of the challenges for those of us that represent rural America with our hospitals is that many urban hospitals are claiming rural access, and that small pot of money that is put aside for rural health care, because of urban hospitals claiming rural status, they are dipping into that money, and so in many cases that's leading to the wealthiest hospitals in the country taking money from the poorest. I would just point that out.
Well, what this bill would do is that it takes the USDA rural development pot of money that only those communities that are certified and that are accessing the rural development programs across the board. It would allow a prioritization for the healthcare programs when a community applies for those funds. That's important because, as you know, sir, when there's a closure of a rural healthcare facility, that infrastructure gets depleted very quickly. And if there's another company or nonprofit that wanted to come into that physical space, they often need help to afford the renovations to reopen. And that's what this bill is designed to address. It's not addressing what you're talking about. It's really talking about the communities that are being directly served by the existing rural development program.
I represent 30 counties in
Oh, yeah,
in
I'm not
Georgia.
doubting.
And so I'm just pointing out that there are a multitude of problems. And I mean, I've just watched as the county next to me was able to secure some funds to rebuild an older healthcare facility that had shut down, so that they will now have a physician in that community who, by the way, happens to be my personal doctor. So now I'll travel 20 minutes instead of an hour. So the issues you're talking about affect a lot of us.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your service to your constituents, and bring those before the committee. We're going to take, I think we're going to have some folks coming up. We're going to keep going as we get other folks seated. We have the gentlelady from Wyoming is seated, so we're going to jump right into and proceed as other members, any of the other members come up for the panel. And so we get the water passed out. All right. Thank you very much for the staff for helping us. That was real quick. I recognize the gentlelady from Wyoming for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Thompson and Ranking Member Craig. I want to thank you for allowing me the opportunity to testify today. I was raised on a ranch in Goshen County, Wyoming, and dozens of my immediate and extended family members remain in the ranching industry to this day. I have become increasingly concerned by the disappearance of ranching families in my community over the last 25 years or so, due in large part to numerous federal policies that have not only caused the current outmigration of our ag producers, but accelerated it in recent times. 2025 started as a year of optimism. Wyoming livestock producers were selling at higher prices, finally turning profits after years of losses, drought, and skyrocketing costs and expenses. One impact I have heard from constituent ranchers who, for the first time in years, didn't find it necessary to take a second job to keep the family ranch alive. Unfortunately, those gains for many were wiped away after unnecessary market disruptions, exacerbating larger issues that make it increasingly difficult to ranch in Wyoming. Because so many of these challenges originated in Washington, D.C., we should be able to fix them in Washington, D.C., but only if we have the courage to do so. The Trump administration has again taken a bold step forward in issuing its plan to fortify the American beef industry, and I believe we can build off this work. I have submitted a number of priorities to this committee for the Farm Bill to do just that, and I want to touch on a few of those today. First, the electronic identification ear tag rule issued by APHIS in 2024. While I know there are members of this committee that do not agree with my opposition to mandatory EID, I am very grateful for your willingness to let me weigh in on this policy. There have been several challenges to the rule's implementation that must be addressed regardless of whether we support it or not. Since the EID rule went into effect, Wyoming and its surrounding states have run into persistent shortages, making compliance nearly impossible. APHIS and the tag manufacturers assured us that they were prepared for the rule, but the fact is they were not. There is, however, another issue exacerbating the shortages. State veterinarians, in an abundance of caution to ensure compliance with this federal mandate, are instructing their cattle producers that they must put EID tags on all cattle from birth to grave, regardless of the type of animal, and despite the fact that the rule requires no such thing. The rule instead applies to sexually intact cattle that are 18 months of age or older and that will be sold or moved across state lines. Many of our cattle do not meet this criteria, including replacement heifers, other breeding and non-breeding stock, and they should not be required to sport an EID tag. The problem is that ear tag manufacturers and state livestock boards are saying that they are now prohibited from manufacturing anything but EID tags. There are thus no banks tags available for those cattle that do not come within the definition of the rule. Ranchers are thus being forced to use EID tags for those cattle that were never included in the rule. This not only creates shortages, but is going to skyrocket the cost of the program. The rule, for example, was designed to cover only 11% of the cattle industry, with the USDA estimating the related cost to be $26.1 million per year. If the rule is instead implemented against 100% of the cattle industry, the cost for the ear tags alone would be over $260 million. Congress has not and most likely would not appropriate funds to meet that price tag, so we need to address this situation. I believe that another priority of mine includes much-needed reform to the Conservation Reserve Program, or CRP. While there is, of course, a legitimate use for this program, it is now time to update and modernize it to safeguard U.S. food production. In summary, I believe that the CRP programs, which are really designed to disincentivize the productive use of land, are a top contributor in the decline in rural ranching families I referenced earlier. This is played out in my home community by literally removing essentially all families with young children across tens of thousands of acres in Goshen County alone. Why? Because our young producers simply cannot compete with the federal government when it comes to being able to purchase or lease land for cattle production when it comes to CRP. The CRP program has risen to cover 27 million acres of land since the 2018 Farm Bill. In Wyoming, fully one-half of our CRP lands are in Goshen County, affecting our schools and the future of our young producers. We now have people who buy land solely for the purpose of putting it into CRP, thereby taking it out of production simply for the federal payments that they can reap. I believe we must seriously consider lowering this overall cap and other reforms as well. Another important target for CRP reform would be to expand the types of approved management tools to include livestock grazing. Cattle production is good for the land. Cattle ranchers produce some of the healthiest protein that we can consume, and we need to increase cattle numbers in this country. This is one way to incentivize ranchers to do so while also furthering the intent of the CRP. Lastly, I would like to express my appreciation for the committee's recognition of the importance of the Secure Rural Schools program and for the passage of its reauthorization in the House last night. Rural communities in my state have received vital economic assistance to support public infrastructure along with search and rescue and other emergency services. Thank you again for this opportunity to testify.
Well, Congresswoman, thank you. Thank you for your leadership. Part of the team was getting Secure Rural Schools across the floor last night. That's a great victory for those of us like yourself and myself that have school districts within national forests that have been living over a shadow of just a 75% or 70% decrease in funding. So thank you for that. Yeah, CRP is the longest. I appreciate your perspectives on CRP modernization. It's the longest operating or existing conservation program, but it's never been modernized, and it has slipped towards incentivizing taking productive farmland out of production, and that's not what the conservation programs are all about. So we look forward to addressing that in Farm Bill 2.0. And we do need some accountability with that EID program. You know, the problem has been as a problem many times is in the implementation. And this, in certain states, seems like it's been out of control. So look forward to doing more oversight on that than what we've done in the past. So,
Chairman Thompson, I look forward to working with you on all of these issues.
yeah, I look forward to it too. Any questions for the Congresswoman Hageman? Go ahead.
Thank you, Representative. Appreciate your expertise in sharing that. Can you just elaborate a little bit more on some of the changes you would like to see as it relates to the EIP program and its implementation? Like, is it more administrative funds to because it sounds like from the chairman's perspective, we don't have enough to properly implement the program. So could you touch on that for me, please?
So the program was underfunded from the very beginning. So the estimate was that it would apply to 11% of the cattle industry, the cattle in the United States. It was designed to do that because I think it was an incremental program, and it was intended to be. It's an astronomically expensive program, and in fact, I think ultimately it will cost over $2 billion if the state vets are successful in forcing all livestock producers to use EID on all cattle, regardless of whether they cross state lines. So it's an unfunded mandate on our cattle industry that's potentially going to cost upwards of $2 billion. So that's one of the challenges associated with it. Anytime that the government mandates something, you create shortages and skyrocket the price. That's exactly what's happened here. The other reality is that I see the challenges of how it could be used in the long run to control our cattle industry and our cattle producers and actually vertically integrate the industry much more than it already is, the way that we have vertically integrated our poultry and our pork industries. So from the standpoint of implementation, we need to make sure that it is implemented pursuant to the clear language of the rule as it exists right now. And that's one of the problems, is it is not, because there's a lot of confusion as to which livestock it ought to apply to. As I indicated, it's sexually intact over 18 months of age that cross state lines. But if I have a replacement heifer that I keep for 8 or 9 years or 10 years on my own ranch, I may sell it as a cull cow eventually, but at that point you could put an ear tag on it, an EID ear tag on it. But right now I need to have bangs testing done for brucellosis, and I need to make sure that I can put a tag on there, but the manufacturers are saying their understanding is they can only manufacture the EIDs, they can't manufacture the metal bangs tags. We need to clarify that if you are going to have a replacement heifer, again as an example, that stays in state rather than moving interstate, that they could continue to use the historical metal bangs tags that we could then have manufacturers produce at a much lower cost.
Thank you so much for that. And then have you heard anything from your cattle ranchers with regards to the $40 billion as it relates to Argentina and the United States?
There's been concerns about the trade deals, so I went immediately to the trade office to find exactly what the situation was. I think there's been an awful lot of misinformation about the arrangement and the deal that has been being negotiated between the administration and Argentina. It shouldn't have impacted our cattle market the way that it did. In fact, no live cattle were being considered for importation. We were looking at lean trim for mixing with hamburger, no premium cuts. So I think there was a lot of hysteria around that when there was discussion about the trade deal being put in place. But in fact, again, I think it was more misinformation than truth. The problem is it really did in real time hit our cattle market, despite the fact that it wasn't targeted to live cattle at all.
All right, thank you. I yield back.
All right, thank you very much. Now please recognize another outstanding member of the all-powerful Agriculture Committee, Congresswoman Hayes from Connecticut, for 5 minutes.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to appear before this committee as part of Member Day to discuss my top priority as the ranking member of the Subcommittee on Nutrition and Foreign Agriculture, and that would be cuts to SNAP. Today, I would like to discuss my legislation, the Restoring Food Security for American Families and Farmers Act of 2025. This legislation would repeal the devastating cuts to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, otherwise known as SNAP, that were included in H.R. 1, the One Big Beautiful Bill. I was joined by nearly 200 House Democrats, including House Ag Committee Ranking Member Angie Craig, to introduce this critical legislation. Companion legislation has also been introduced in the Senate by Senator Ben Ray Lujan. This bill also has the support of more than 1,400 organizations nationwide. SNAP is the most effective anti-hunger program in our country, serving nearly 42 million Americans, including children, seniors, and veterans. Also, the loss of SNAP by so many people would affect categorical eligibility, which impacts programs like WIC, school meals, heating assistance, and other programs. This is very important. Approximately 360,000 people in Connecticut utilize the SNAP program. Despite serving as a lifeline to keep families fed, we have seen repeated attempts to defund SNAP and keep those in need from accessing benefits. In July, the majority advanced H.R. 1, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which included the largest cuts in the history of the program. H.R. 1 cuts $187 billion from nutrition programs and creates administrative barriers designed to make it harder for people to get assistance. Equally as damaging are the cost share provisions that will force states to either cover the cost or opt out completely, as we've heard from other members on this panel. During the government shutdown, we witnessed just how disastrous it will be for states to shore up benefits without support from the federal government. As the administration withheld contingency reserve dollars to cover SNAP benefits for November, states scrambled to come up with plans to cover the costs. Every state, every congressional district, every community, rural, urban, suburban, were panicked about how they would feed people in their community. This is only a microcosm of what will be on the horizon for states if the cost share provisions included in the One Big Beautiful Bill go into effect. My bill would repeal these unfunded mandates to ensure that states do not have to make tough decisions about which programs will be lost as a result of federal funding cuts. The bill also helps to mitigate the negative impact SNAP cuts would have on farmers, ranchers, producers, and the nearly 250,000 grocers authorized to accept SNAP dollars. In the year 2025, in the United States of America, we have the ability to feed our people. I strongly urge this committee to reverse course on the cuts to SNAP, stop weaponizing hunger, and let's have some real discussion about what this looks like and bring this bill to the floor. I also would encourage, we've heard a lot from different members about the interpretation of things, and the member before me just talked about misinformation and how people are interpreting things like the tariffs or some of the actions by the USDA in this administration incorrectly. The best way to address that is with transparency. The Secretary of Agriculture should be before this committee explaining to us the motives behind many of the actions, letting this committee work with her to decide what next steps are. States should not be left scrambling for a tweet or an email about guidelines about how they should proceed. This committee must begin to exercise our constitutional authority as a separate and co-equal branch and bring secretaries and administration officials before this body to share with the American people how these plans will be implemented, how they will roll out, what they will look like by the time they get to the ground. And governors should not be left to wonder what is happening. I don't care if you are in a red state, a blue state, people on the ground don't care. They want to know how these programs will work. And if this administration and this secretary has such a wonderful plan that the American people will be happy with the changes, then they should be coming here before this committee and sharing those changes, not only with us, but with the American people. And with that, I yield back.
Thank the gentlelady. Any questions for Congresswoman Hayes?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Connecticut is what is considered a donor state. Can you elaborate on that and how these, the federally mandated expectation for states to pay into the program would impact not only a donor state, but a state like mine that does not have the resources?
Well, you're absolutely right. Connecticut is a donor state, which means we, the residents of the state of Connecticut, through their taxes, pay more, send more money to the federal government than we receive as a state to help support these programs. We actually might be much better off if we just kept our SNAP dollars at home and took care of our own people. And our governor has made the decision in Connecticut that we would use reserve funds or shift from other programs because it is a priority for us in the state of Connecticut to feed people. So I just wonder, and this is why it would be really important for us to hold hearings or for the secretary to come before this body, because in many states that rely heavily on the federal government, that send less than get back more than they send to the federal government, they will be left with just not being able to come up with the funds and completely eliminating a program like SNAP. This idea that the state should have to pay for it, I would argue that in my state of Connecticut, we already pay for it because we send more to the federal government to help fill in the gap for some of the other states. And if you look at the map of where benefits are accessed, it's not just in Democratic states or urban communities. It is our rural communities. It is our bright red states. It is our suburban communities. It is everywhere across this country. And I think one of the things that was amplified during the shutdown is the fragility of our food security networks. It wasn't just pockets around the country. It was every congressional district, every community. So it really is difficult for me to understand or wrap my head around how states who already rely so heavily on the federal government are going to be able to fund these programs with even less help and support from the government.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, with that, I yield back.
I thank the gentlelady for yielding back. Oh, Mrs. Hayes, I agree with you. I'm looking forward to having individuals from the administration before the committee. So I think that's a really important thing. I went through 4 years in the last administration. We got very little of that. That frustrated me. So I don't want any of us to be frustrated. We need to have those communications. And I'd like to take it one step forward, actually, and I've talked about this for some time. I would like to request the governors, certain governors, to come and sit before us to be able to share how they're implementing their programs. And given the fact they've got 3 years in order to do the state share, that's with an error rate of 6%, how are they working towards getting that error rate down? I know in the state of Pennsylvania, ours is coming down, I've heard, and that's wonderful, because errors only hurt the beneficiaries, the people that are struggling financially. So thank you for your passion.
Well, I would just say that, I mean, as the chairman of the committee, respectfully, when you know better, you do better. And on this committee, I don't care what state it is, what secretary it is, we should be calling people before this committee, and we could call a hearing next week and
Yeah,
have
we-
governors come in and talk about those things. We actually have the ability to do that.
Yeah, we would have probably had someone before the committee if we wouldn't have been shut down for a month and a half. That delayed a lot, almost delayed everything, so.
Well, when you put a bill in front of us that asks us to either feed people or accept some of the unreasonable cuts, which were an impossible choice, that's really
Yeah.
not the premise that we should be operating from. But
Well,
the
we
fact
just-
that this committee and every committee
and-
tries to throw that out at every turn as if the reasonable choice would have been to accept $187 billion in cuts or get November benefits out on time, I would argue that it required a lot more negotiation, which is what we attempted to do. And had we had more than one committee in the preceding year, I think we could have addressed some of these things.
Yeah.
One committee hearing on this topic in the preceding year, we could have addressed some of these
Well,
things.
I think how we portray that is really important, too. There's, a lot of the savings came from folks who were not truly eligible for SNAP, non-citizens, and a whole
That still hasn't been,
host of
and again,
things
if we
like
had,
that.
if we had hearings, we would have been able to demonstrate that, because that has not been demonstrated, and the savings didn't go back into the treasury, they went to fund the tax cuts. And when we look at how is the data being collected or disaggregated, one of the things I've heard at home is we have a lot of mixed status families where the children may have status where, and one of the parents does not. Those children are still eligible for benefits, so that's not, but if this was truly about fraud or ineligibility, we would be having hearings on fraud and ineligibility and rooting out those things and preserving and protecting the parts of the program that works. That's not what this committee has done, and any characterization other than that is just not true.
I appreciate your opinions and your testimony before the committee.
Thank you.
So, thank you. And now, please recognize the resident commissioner from the great territory of Puerto Rico, Pablo Hernandez, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Thompson and Ranking Member Craig, esteemed colleagues. I come here today with a single, simple, bipartisan ask. SNAP for Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico has been excluded from the SNAP program since 1982, and we've submitted a bipartisan bill that has the support of 9 Democrats and 6 Republicans to ensure that Puerto Rico gets to transition from its current block grant NAP program to the national SNAP program. Now, this bill has been presented in the past, and members have raised concerns which we have addressed in this newer version. First, we are providing for a longer transition that addresses the concerns about having the state government be ready for the implementation and administration of the SNAP program. We've also requested a CBO score, which should help address some of the concerns. And I urge you to view this as an investment, not as an expense. It is an investment because it would just be $1 billion more for the program for an island that trades over $7 billion with the mainland in agricultural products. So if we get more money under SNAP as opposed to NAP, we would be buying more products from the mainland, from your districts, for our people, thus strengthening our economies. Moreover, do not view this as additional welfare, view this as economic development and empower. By having SNAP in Puerto Rico, we would be able to raise the income levels that allow people to work and keep their benefits, thus driving more people into the workforce. And finally, I urge you to view this as an investment in justice. During my time in the district, I've spoken to students who, because they do not have SNAP and do not have the level of benefits that they would have under SNAP, have had to decide whether to buy a chemistry manual or to buy food to feed themselves. This is a low-effort initiative with a high impact. When you look at the fact that you have families of 3 that have an average benefit of $315 a month in an island where foodstuffs are more expensive because of shipping, and under SNAP they would have $535, you are doing something to end hunger. So I urge you all to support this initiative. As I said, this unites Democrats and Republicans.
This has the support of your former colleague and current Republican governor of Puerto Rico, Jennifer Gonzalez Colon. And in the island, this unites people who support continuing its Commonwealth status, transitioning to become a state, or even to become independent. So this crosses party lines. This is a matter of justice, but this is also an economic opportunity for Puerto Rico and for the United States. Thank you, and I yield back.
Commissioner, thank you very much. Any members have some questions? Go ahead, please.
I just want to thank you, Mr. Hernandez, for your work on this issue. I'm a strong supporter of extending SNAP benefits to those Americans living in Puerto Rico, and I commend your efforts. Thank you.
If not, Commissioner, thank you so much. I appreciate your service. I know this is certainly a bipartisan issue, as you mentioned yourself and Governor Gonzalez Colon. So I appreciate it. Thank you. Now I'm pleased to recognize the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Moore, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. It's great to be with you. And let me first start off by thanking this committee and its work to deal with a lot of issues I know that are there. And from what I hear, probably one of the biggest issues facing agriculture right now are input cost. I hear that from, particularly from row crop farmers, but I also hear it from folks who are dealing with, with animals. And so it is, I applaud this committee's work, Mr. Chairman, your leadership on that, to do what we can to help the agriculture industry. In my home state, agriculture is the leading industry in the state, full stop. So very proud of where we are in North Carolina, but understand the issues facing our country, and I wanted to thank this committee for its work on that. I did want to address something that happened, and this was something that was a gift from our friends in the Senate. As you recall, as a part of the government funding package that ended the shutdown, the bill included some major changes to the federal hemp policy without industry input and really without any stakeholder involvement. Specifically, it changed the federal definition and regulation of hemp-derived products. These changes were made completely outside of regular order. There were no hearings, no stakeholder engagement, and no meaningful debate. As enacted, this new law would effectively eliminate over 95% of North Carolina's hemp industry and put more than 220,000 American jobs at risk. It would have major consequences for small businesses and farmers in North Carolina and across the country. This very committee was at the heart of enacting the hemp provisions in the 2018 Farm Bill that this one provision just whole cloth essentially eliminated. I can tell you that farmers in North Carolina have relied on this framework for the past several years. They've invested in land, capital, et cetera, as well as retail operations. They entered this industry in good faith, followed the rules and guidance set out in the Farm Bill. And Mr. Chairman, I submit it simply isn't right to change the rules of the game overnight, and certainly not without going through the proper legislative process. I can tell you that we as House Republicans are doing a lot to restore the American dream in rural America. And I would submit to you that this provision that was put in that provision, it does not help our rural hemp farmers around the country. Small businesses and farms across this industry are already being forced to consider laying off employees and pulling long-term investments. And this change is set to go into effect next year unless Congress acts to stop it. In the months ahead, Mr. Chairman, my ask is that this committee use regular order to thoroughly examine the issue and to develop legislation that addresses these changes that were made. The Agriculture Committee is the appropriate venue to evaluate the full scope and impact, to hear directly from our farmers and determine the best path forward. These hardworking folks deserve the opportunity to have their voices heard. They deserve a clear regulatory framework that reflects real-world conditions and ensures fair competition. I look forward to working with this committee and stand ready to serve as a resource and a partner as you take up this issue. I do believe, Mr. Chairman, there are ways to address any of the criticisms that are out there and to do so in a more effective way than what was put upon us in that provision. Like everyone here, it was put into a bill to reopen the government. I voted for it because we needed to reopen the government. But that doesn't mean we can't go back and fix this. This committee did a lot of work on the Farm Bill in 2018, and it's opened up a lot of opportunities in agriculture that not only in my home state of North Carolina, but across the country. And I can tell you that it is, it's something that has created jobs, and we need to do all we can to make sure those jobs remain in place and to allow this as a viable industry for our friends in agriculture. With that, with time left over, something very rare for a former lawyer to do, I yield back.
Well, thank you, Mr. Moore. Open this up. Any questions from any members? Go ahead, please.
Representative Moore, thank you for your testimony, and I just want to say from Minnesota hemp growers, we are in complete agreement. We've spent a lot of time back home creating a regulatory structure for hemp that I would sure hate to see completely wiped away, so we'll be joining you in this fight to make sure we fix this over the next year. Thank you.
Ma'am, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Baird, Dr. Baird.
I'd like to add my appreciation for you bringing this issue before the committee. And we have some of the same concerns in Indiana. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I yield back.
Very good. Ms. Moore, thank you so much for your testimony and representing your constituents back home.
Thank you. Always great to be with you, sir.
Yes, sir. Now, please recognize Representative Schlotton for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair and Madam Ranking Member, for holding this hearing, giving us an opportunity to weigh in on the important agricultural issues facing our districts. I want to use my time very briefly just to highlight an important bipartisan bill that I am working on called the Catch It Act, which stands for Community Access to Treatment and Care for Health through Increased Testing. This is a bill that would help rural communities better screen for diseases and certain cancers like breast cancer. Whether our constituents live in a major city or a small town, everyone deserves access to life-saving early detection services. Our bill would build on the Department of Agriculture's Community Facilities Grant Program by boosting the federal cost share to 25% for rural projects involving preventative health equipment like mammogram machines, mobile health units, and early detection tools. I introduced this legislation with my good friend and colleague from Iowa, Congresswoman Ashley Hinson, because rural health is top of mind for both of us, as it is for many individuals on this committee. Our Catch It Act helps small communities afford the equipment that they need to keep people healthy. Catching diseases earlier avoids costly increase in healthcare costs by allowing the disease to be treated earlier and not progressing to a later stage, which again becomes more costly and deadlier to treat. This common sense legislation would expand affordable, accessible care in our smallest communities, too many of which have been overlooked for far too long. We appreciate the committee's attention to this bill. Thank you, and I yield back.
Well, I thank the gentlelady. As rural development and what it does, the impact it can have on rural health is significant, and impact's big. I think the awareness is low, and certainly an investment from a preventive perspective as someone who practiced healthcare for 28 years, that's some of the best dollars we can spend. Better for outcomes, quality of life, and quite frankly, the economy as well, economically, in terms of saving the burden of things that are not caught early. Recognize the ranking member.
Just thank you so much for your testimony, Representative Schlotton, and we will continue to work toward good partnership to get your legislation across the finish line. Thank you.
Very good. Well, thank you so much. Now, please recognize the gentleman from California, Mr. Cano, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman and Ms. Ranking Member, thank you for hosting this Member Day hearing. As we sit here, we must acknowledge that veterans, their families, and caregivers across the country are facing higher costs of living. Veterans are not immune to the economic realities facing the general population. VA programs can only mitigate, not shield veterans from the impacts of larger economic trends. I have to tell you, I'm incredibly frustrated that this Congress and this committee delivered devastating SNAP cuts earlier this year. Under what I call the big ugly bill, veterans will now be subject to work requirements. And what that really means is paperwork requirements, and these paperwork requirements do not help people find jobs, they just cut people off of food. In my district, over 35,000 households and nearly 116,000 people rely on SNAP. One constituent told me, quote, "I am a low-income senior citizen. I only receive $40 from the SNAP program, and I can barely make it each month after my rent and bills are paid. I use all the rest of my money on food, and usually by the end of the month, I'm out of food. It is very distressing to think about them cutting off the $40 I get. I know that is not much to a lot of people, but it is to me," end quote. Mr. Chairman, your committee's markup of the reconciliation package, during that markup, you stated, quote, "Our veterans are exempt from the SNAP work requirement, which is the law, and we're not changing it," end quote. Yet, here we are. I ask you to hold joint hearings with the VA committee and to hear directly from veterans and families regarding the impacts hunger is having on their lives. Today, we see a heavy use of food pantries at VA facilities, on military bases, and in military communities across the country. We know the need is there. Kicking people off SNAP doesn't reduce poverty, it just exacerbates it, makes it worse. As the wealthiest country on earth, we have no excuse for this. I would also like to take a moment to highlight the over 300,000 veteran farmers. Knowing that farm bankruptcies are rising and veteran producers tend to run smaller farms with thinner margins, I worry about how the Trump tariffs are damaging veteran farmers' livelihoods. And I'm not confident that USDA and VA are postured to help these veterans and families as they face foreclosures. We know that early intervention and prevention is much more cost-effective than addressing needs once in crisis. It holds true for housing, it holds true for hunger, it holds true for employment, and it holds true for mental health. Every dollar you're taking away from hungry veterans through SNAP cuts, or every dollar a veteran farmer loses in Trump's trade war, we are going to have to spend 2 or 3 or 10 times over at VA. VA's resources are already thin. As we stare down over $1 trillion in Medicaid cuts, more veterans will turn to VA and the Indian Health Service for care. But accessing care is difficult for rural veterans and families because they must travel such long distances to medical facilities. These disincentives and reductions, what this does is disincentivizes and reduces preventative care. It negatively impacts rural veterans' physical health, which is inextricably tied to their ability to earn a living and, in turn, their mental health. It affects their mental health. Again, Congress cannot gut essential social safety net programs without impacting veterans. My predecessor on the VA committee, who also served as a distinguished member of your panel, Governor Walz of Minnesota, constantly reminded us that we show our true priorities through how we spend the VA budgets and the committee's time. I'm sure he had the same thing, he said the same thing to you all in this very room as well. He was right, and I challenge every member of this committee to put their money where their mouth is. I'm sure every one of us will give eloquent speeches on Memorial Day and Veterans Day thanking our military members for their service. But will this committee vote to restore exemptions to SNAP work requirements for veterans? I tried to do that in the Rules Committee when they were moving the reconciliation bill through this body. And I was told, no, we have to keep the work requirements for veterans in the bill. Or will you vote to prevent a $1 billion bailout of Argentina while veteran farmers right here in the United States are on the brink of bankruptcy? Or will this committee rubber stamp continued cuts that undermine rural health care, bankrupt veteran farmers, and cause veterans and their families and their survivors to go hungry? We here in Congress must do better, Mr. Chairman. I ask you to lead us in that regard with the power of your gavel, and I yield back.
Well, I thank the gentleman. I've been very pleased with the past number of, including the National Defense Authorization Act that passed yesterday with it was 3.8%, the increase, wage increase for soldiers. As someone who's an active duty military family, very pleased how the successive years of significant increases, because we had a lot of families, especially those members of the military that joined a little older, so they came with a spouse and kids. And quite frankly, they were, I always say that what we pay at private is is probably pretty adequate because we also house them and feed them. But if you come with a little older in your 30s maybe or late 20s and you come with a family, it's challenging because you're usually using off-base housing and I just really appreciate what the NDAAs have been doing of recognizing the importance of our military and Congress as a whole with these increases that we have provided to make sure that, which I think they use that for a lot of purposes, but including their own food security. I assure you we have a significant programs already in existence in terms of for our returning veterans in terms of the agriculture field as well. We recognize the value of that, the importance of it as well, and the commitment to that. So any additional? Go ahead.
Yeah, Ranking Member Takano, I want to thank you for standing up for hungry veterans in our country and in our community. I also would like to extend a very happy birthday publicly to you.
Thank you
happy
very much.
birthday to you. And then I just have one question. What
Sure.
are the unique needs of the veteran population that cause you the greatest concern as it relates to what the Republican-led Congress has done in the SNAP program, which of course was to put work requirements on our nation's veterans?
Well, you know, 1/3 of our veterans choose to live in non-urban areas. They like the quiet and the peace they get living in more rural areas. And it's directly related to their service history. They don't like noise and bangs and all of that. That puts them in greater challenge in terms of access to health care. The more rural they get, they often are very far away from medical centers. But, you know, significant numbers of our veterans face food insecurity. And notwithstanding what the chairman said about what the NDAA has done to improve pay, we have a number of active duty military service members and their families that were qualifying for SNAP. And to subject our veterans to the work requirement, which is really a very insidious way to make it difficult for them to get food benefits. Our veterans who served our country and their families, they're going hungry. This is inexcusable. It's wrong, and I thought it was very heartless when I couldn't even get an exemption for our veterans to this requirement that this committee, the Agriculture Committee, they put it into the Ag Bill, the SNAP cuts that would affect our veterans. That to me was a shameful day.
Thank you so much, Representative Takano. And Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. Quite frankly, as a father of a wounded warrior who's serving active duty, I will tell you what's not fair is when your middle child retires before you do. February hits his 20 years of service to this great nation, earning a Purple Heart, which he was quick to tell me that, Dad, you know how you get a Purple Heart, right? He says, you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I will say that any of our veterans who are beyond the designated age, are going to be exempt. Any veteran that has a disability, and I think the VA has done a better job than what perhaps years ago of working and doing those disability ratings. Because it takes a wear and tear on the body, serving in the military, depending on your MOS and what it is that you perform every day. And honestly, if you're coming out of the military and you don't have a disability and I don't know, I mean, I just find that someone that's going from active duty status to veterans, they want to work. And anything, what we've done is now we're investing dollars to help them with SNAP education and continuing education. We're investing in those veterans for them to be able to maybe get a different skill set or maybe just to refine the skill set that they've worked on and they performed bravely why they're part of the military. I appreciate your passion for the military and our veterans specifically, and I appreciate you, you know, bringing those perspectives and those of your constituents before the committee.
Well, can I just say, with regard to those veterans who don't have disabilities, who don't have an actual disability rating, that could be for many, many reasons. And we have homeless veterans that we're going to have, it's going to be more difficult to serve their needs if they have to go through these onerous work requirements. You know, maybe for a lot of reasons why that veteran never got connected with the VA. And for us to address this shameful problem of having veterans on the streets, living without shelter, and now facing a more difficult challenge of being able to you know, have a sustainable path to self-sufficiency. You know, these work requirements are simply not helpful. So that's my response. Thank you.
You're welcome. Seeing no other members before the committee, I'll just make it clear that any members that would like to submit for the record, and we have some statements have been submitted already, the committee would welcome those in terms of their input. And now recognize the gentlelady, the ranking member, for any closing comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just close with great thanks to those members throughout both of our parties who came today to express what their priorities are in this country as it relates to the jurisdiction of this committee. And we appreciate the opportunity to listen and your work on behalf of your constituents. Thank you.
I thank the gentlelady. I want to thank all of our colleagues on both sides of the aisle for sharing their priorities before the committee. Many of these issues presented have been long-held priorities for our agriculture stakeholder community and have been championed by both Republicans and Democrats. We heard from members on the vital role of USDA trade promotion programs, including our Democratic colleague from Washington on the need for more funding for the market access program. We heard from our colleague about the vital need for greater investment in agriculture research programs. We heard from our colleagues about the need for greater investment in conservation programs, among other priorities. And what some were unaware of and others failed to acknowledge or intentionally omitted is the historic investments accomplished in H.R. 1. And I know budget reconciliation is always partisan. I think we had that discussion long before that train left the station. I have been on both sides of budget reconciliation but the fact is we were able to accomplish a historic increase in baseline funding for our popular locally led conservation programs, with total funding for EQIP, CSP, ASEP, and RCPP increasing by 54% in total by 2031. That's now in law as part of the H.R. 1 or the One Big Beautiful Bill. Historic increase in funding for the Market Access Program and Foreign Market Development Program. Those were both doubled in funding by the Big Beautiful Bill. Historic investment in the Specialty Crop Research Initiative and Specialty Crop Block Grants to support our specialty crop industry. That's right, it's now law as a part of H.R. 1. $125 million per year, the first mandatory funding in history for the Agriculture Research Facilities Act, and it's in the Big Beautiful Bill. Historic $1.5 billion over the next decade in livestock biosecurity, supporting more large animal veterinarians, USDA laboratories, vaccination developments, APHIS, and assistance for farmers impacted by animal disease. And yes, we also secured that in H.R. 1. It's now law. And a historic investment in our farm safety net in at least a generation, part of H.R. 1. My hope is going forward is, I mean, there are some things, bills that in past years that overall I was not able to support for whatever reasons, although I did take the opportunity to celebrate some of the individual wins for the people that I was serving and working for, and I'm hoping that that's what, whatever the feelings are with budget reconciliation, that we can, as we look at the agriculture title of that, the biggest investment in putting the farm back in the Farm Bill, well, probably over at least 25 years. So, and those ideas were all that I just named were all bipartisan. Ones that we worked on together as we listened to the key constituency of agriculture as we traveled the nation. So very pleased that we were able to serve and provide that. And so with that, I think that concludes our business with our member day. Would encourage members to submit any additional comments to the committee of their priorities, issues, wishes they might have as we move forward and prepare to finish the Farm Bill process with Farm Bill 2.0. So with that, this hearing is now adjourned.